The Gigantamax Kanto starters are returning to Pokemon Go during a max battle weekend, and in this video I will be going through all of the best counters and strategies to help you take them down, and I'll be going through a couple of tips to help you maximize on Stardust during this event. So the event takes place from March 8th at 6 AM until the 9th at 9 PM local time, and it will feature Max Grookey, Scorbunny and Sobble in 1-star max battles, which will cost 250 max particles to battle, and the Gigantamax Kanto starters Venusaur, Charizard and Blastoise will be available in 6-star max battles, which will require 800 max particles to battle. But how can you take them down with as few people as possible? Well, I will be going through the best tanks, healers and attackers you can use on the GMAX Kanto starters later on, but first let's go through some tips that'll help you take these down easier. Now you can challenge these battles with up to 40 trainers split into groups of 4, and it is within these groups of 4 where you can really start to strategize with each other, and these will help to reduce the amount of trainers you need because most of the time there aren't that many trainers around to help. And it is worth noting that the last time these GMAX Kanto starters were available, they were a lot more difficult for a few reasons. Firstly, they were a little bit overtuned, with groups of 40 trainers struggling to defeat it, so the difficulty was reduced by Niantic, which allowed GMAX Pokemon like Gengar and Toxtricity that followed to be beaten by less trainers. And the second reason why they will be easier this time around is because of the counters. When the GMAX Kanto starters were available last time, the Dynamax system had only been part of the game for 2 months, meaning a lot of trainers either didn't have a lot of max Pokemon to use, or they hadn't powered them up or their max moves yet. However, this will be less the case now for the majority, with the system having been in place for around 6 months now. And thirdly, if you are willing to spend on them, you can also get max mushrooms now in the in-game shop, but they are at a steep price of 400 Pokecoins, but they are very helpful because they will double the damage output of your Pokemon for 30 minutes. So they are really strong, and they could effectively halve the number of people you need to win a battle. So in a team of 4, it is recommended for 5-star and 6-star max battles that you split the team into a tank, a healer or a second tank, and 2 attackers. But worth noting, there are other strategies such as having all players use tanks to start off to fill up the max meter, and then swap out into attackers during the Dynamax window. This can allow for more damage in a 4-person party. But what exactly are tanks, healers and attackers, and what makes certain Pokemon good at these roles? So briefly, a tank is a Pokemon that has high defenses and a typing that resists most of the attacks of the max battle boss, so overall it can take less damage. It can also be a max guard user, which gives it more health in the form of shields, and this can taunt the max battle boss to attack it more often than it attacks others in the party. This is generally useful when working in a team, so you can take the heat off attackers, which usually have stats more weighted in attack, so they are more frail and may be defeated more quickly if they're hit often. Good tanks do often have 0.5 second animation fast attacks as well, moves like Water Gun and Bite for example, that allow them to charge the max meter up more quickly than other moves. This is particularly helpful for strategies when everyone is using attackers or when you're soloing, because you can use the tank to build up the max meter faster, then during the Dynamax phase swap into your attacker and use its max moves, and then swap back out to the tank and repeat. Now healers can be pretty similar to tanks in terms of you want them to take less damage and resist attacks, etc, but as they are going to be using max spirit to heal the party, you do want them to have a high stamina stat. This is because max spirit heals an amount that is a percentage of the user's HP, so the higher the max spirit user's HP, the bigger the heal will be. This means Pokemon like Max Chansey, for example, will be really good for this role with its very high HP stat. And lastly, for attackers, you want Pokemon that can deal as much damage as possible with strong, super effective moves and a high attack stat. Their goal is to do as much damage as possible and as quickly as possible. It's also worth noting that the Max Battle Boss can do 2 types of attacks, which will be chosen from the Pokemon's charged attack move pool. One attack is a large attack that hits all Pokemon, and this can't be dodged, and the second attack is a direct attack on a specific Pokemon that can be dodged by keeping an eye on the attack feed and the 3 lines that appear above your Pokemon's head. And if you encounter an attack combination that is tricky to deal with, you can always back out of the lobby and re-lobby to re-roll the moveset. This is helpful if you have certain counters that work better with certain movesets. Now with that said, what are the best counters for GMAX Kanto starters, and are they worth battling? So starting with GMAX Charizard, it is the best fire type attacker for max battles until GMAX Cinderace comes to the game in the future, and currently it's the best counter for GMAX Venusaur, so generally a really good one to get if you can. It can be shiny from these battles, and the 100% IV is 1651. Being a fire and flying type, it is weak to electric, water, and it has a double weakness to rock type attacks. It will use 2 of the following moves during battle: Flamethrower, Dragon Claw, Fire Blast, Overheat, or Blast Burn, and therefore the best tanks will be GMAX Blastoise, Max Blastoise, GMAX Lapras, GMAX Kingler, and Max Kingler. And Pokemon like GMAX and DMAX Blastoise, GMAX Lapras, and GMAX Toxtricity can also be used as healers with Max Spirit. And for the attackers, I would recommend GMAX Blastoise, GMAX Kingler, Max Inteleon, Max Blastoise, Max Kingler, GMAX Toxtricity, and Max Zapdos as some examples. When it comes to GMAX Venusaur, it's currently the best grass type attacker for max battles until GMAX Rillaboom eventually comes to the game. And at the moment, it is the best counter for GMAX Blastoise as well. It too can be shiny, and the 100% IV is 1554. Being a grass and poison type, it is weak to fire, flying, ice, and psychic type attacks. And it will use 2 of the following moves during the battle: Petal Blizzard, Sludge Bomb, Solar Beam, and Frenzy Plant. Therefore, the best tanks will be GMAX Venusaur itself, GMAX Charizard, Max Metagross, and Max Venusaur. For healers, you could use GMAX Venusaur itself, Max Metagross, Max Venusaur, and Max Greedent. And for attackers, I would recommend GMAX Charizard, Max Moltres, Max Metagross, Max Charizard, Max Articuno, Max Cinderace, GMAX Gengar, and Max Darmanitan. And lastly, for GMAX Blastoise, it is one of the strongest water type attackers for max battles, but it is as a tank where it shines the most with its relatively high defense and access to 0.5 second animation fast attacks like Bite and Water Gun. So overall, this is a really great Pokemon to have. It can be shiny, and the 100% IV is 1409. It's a water type and therefore weak to grass and electric type attacks. It will use 2 of the following moves during the battle: Flash Cannon, Ice Beam, Hydro Pump, Hydro Cannon, and Skull Bash. Therefore, the best tanks are GMAX Blastoise itself, GMAX Lapras, GMAX Venusaur, Max Metagross, Max Blastoise, and Max Venusaur. And when it comes to healers, you could consider using GMAX Venusaur, GMAX Blastoise itself, GMAX Lapras, Max Venusaur, Max Blastoise, or Max Greedent. And for attackers, I would recommend GMAX Venusaur, Max Zapdos, Max Rillaboom, GMAX Toxtricity, Max Venusaur, Max Metagross, and Max Toxtricity, amongst others. But how many trainers will be required to take these bosses down? Well, it does very much depend on your counters and your strategy. And whilst having good communication within your group to decide roles, this often can't be the case for various reasons. But I do think most people are likely to use attackers because of how the raid system works, so knowing how the tanking and healing works could be a good advantage to your team, so it's worth considering taking on these roles if you can't communicate with your team. You can also see what your teammates are using whilst in battle, and if you do see they are mainly using Pokemon that are used as attackers, you could switch to a healer or a tank to try and improve your chances of victory. And even if all of your Pokemon are knocked out, you can still help by cheering on your teammates. This will increase the rate at which their max meter fills. Overall though, I would imagine that these GMAX Kanto starters would take around 10 plus people to beat, but with good strategy and team composition, it might be doable with less. But worth bearing in mind, like I mentioned before, these will most likely be easier than the first time around. And if you are looking to find people to do these battles with, I would recommend checking local Discords, Niantic Campfire, Facebook groups, etc. to see if you can join up with a group to do these battles. Otherwise, if possible, you could go to a densely populated area like a city at the start of the Gigantamax battles to see if there are others out there doing them. Now, there are a couple of ways you can get a lot of Stardust during this event. Firstly, if you are able to do some of these GMAX battles, then I would recommend having star pieces active whilst you do them, because they do give 25,000 Stardust per battle, which will be 37.5k Stardust with the star piece active. And if you have the poker coins, you could spend 200 poker coins to double up your rewards to get 75,000 Stardust per GMAX battle. If you are able to get a group of people and do a load of these battles, then you could really start to rack up the Stardust. However, if you are only likely to be able to do the odd one, or you're unsure if you can win them, then using a star piece might not be worth it. However, on the 8th between 2 PM and 5 PM, there's another event going on at the same time as this event, and that is Fuecoco Community Day, and the main bonus is 3 times catch Stardust. And when paired with a star piece, that means you will be getting 450 Stardust per Fuecoco catch. So with quick catching, Origin Palkia's Spatial Rend Adventure effect, and a star piece active, this will be a great event for picking up extra Stardust. Worth noting as well, the 3 hours of Community Day will most likely be your best chance to find people to do the GMAX battles with, because there likely will be more people playing the game during this time. And if you do manage to do some GMAX battles during this time, you can always have an auto catcher catching Fuecoco in the background whilst you battle to make sure you aren't missing out on catches. With that said though, if you did enjoy this video, then I recommend checking out these videos on the screen now, and I'll catch you in the next one.